Good evening. Welcome back to another episode of Please Call Me Crazy, brought to you by Free People Radio and powered by our favorite sponsor, TireGet.com. That's TireGet.com. You have to buy tires from somebody. You might as well buy them from us and help fund the movement, help support the movement. We believe in the freedom of movement. That's exactly what the establishment wants to take from you now. I'm your host, Royce White, here in the belly of the beast, Minneapolis, Minnesota. And this is episode 178, I believe. Episode 178. Today we have another incredible family and friends guest, none other than Ryan Rivard. And he has a lot of things going on, an incredible backstory, and I'm going to let him speak for himself. So we're happy to have you in the studio today, Ryan. Thanks for being here with us, and it's a pleasure, man. It really is.
Yeah, well, thank you again for the invite.
Yeah.
It's amazing to be here. So,
Yeah.
fantastic studio.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Yeah,
So we have a mutual friend, the great Kerry Sutherland, who I got to have in the studio at some point here in the near future. Now that he's retired,
yeah,
Kerry is a fixture in the Minnesota sports community. He was a coach. He's still a coach. He helps coach at my alma mater, Hopkins High School. But he coached me in the pro-am. He coached back in the day at a couple of high schools that were a rival of mine. And I've been knowing him since I was young. He's been one of the general managers at the Lifetime Fitness organization for 30 plus years.
yeah.
I grew up going up there with my uncles and some of the pro players playing on the weekends. So I had the great privilege to be able to do that. And he's taught me a lot over the years. So that's how we got introduced. And I know you know Kerry well, but I want to spend some time on your backstory. I heard a little bit of it when you came and spoke to our
Sure.
team. But let's go all the way back, where you were born,
Yeah,
where you came from, where you were raised. I know you talked about it briefly when we were
sure.
at dinner, but I know the fans would enjoy hearing even more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Um, Originally born in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So my mom's side of the family's from there, and my father's side of the family's from Illinois. So I lived there for a couple of years. My mom and dad actually were not together at the time. Um, I was living with her and a couple other people helping to raise me for a few years. And eventually they got back together, got pregnant with my sister, and we all moved to Chicago together. So I spent most of my childhood in Chicagoland area, both in the city and then a great deal in the suburbs uh, near Evanston. Spent a lot of years in Evanston and then on the North Shore there. Um, But yeah, so when I was younger,
And pull this right in front of you if you can.
yeah,
Yeah, I want to make sure they
perfect.
pull it over this way a little bit. Yeah, there you go.
There we
Perfect.
go.
There you
Perfect.
go. Yep.
Yeah, so when I was younger, I was really close with my grandfather, my mom's father. And because I didn't have my dad around initially for the first couple of years, he was kind of always there to help raise me and support me. She had a couple other siblings as well, but she was the first to have kids, so I was his first grandkid. We spent a lot of time together. He ran a real estate business, and that his father and grandfather had started, and kind of generational business, done well for themselves. And so I used to watch him in the nice suits and the Cadillac and one of the first, phones in the cars and all that stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember him taking me out to a golf course one time, and as a little kid, and telling me, "Hey, someday we're gonna teach you how to golf." And I didn't realize he owned the golf course at the time. So it was very impactful for me. I really kind of looked up to him, and I didn't know what business was like. I didn't know what being a man was like at the time. I was so young, but I thought to myself, if I'm gonna do something like that, this is the guy that I would eventually become like. Unfortunately, one of his business partners was embezzling the money from the business at the time and ended up essentially bankrupting his legacy, his generational family's business. And he found out about, I think he was 65, 66. And instead of trying to talk to the family about it, he felt a lot of shame, and he went in the backyard and he shot himself.
Mm.
And I was about 7 or 8 at the time, and it really made an impact on me. I remember my mom coming in. I think, I was in like second grade. She came into the class, and immediately I knew. I just said, "Hey, is it Grandpa?" she said, "Yeah, I don't know how you knew that, but yeah, he passed away." And I just had a really strong connection with him, and I think that that's how I knew. And from that point, I told my mom, "Hey, I'm not going to cry at the funeral. I'm not going to share any of these emotions," and felt like I was tough, in doing that, and it really just kind of shut me down emotionally.
Mm.
I ended up starting to use an inhaler that I had as a kid. I had asthma when I was a little bit younger, and just do it over and over and over again, and notice that I would get high. And didn't,
Albuterol.
yeah,
Albuterol.
didn't know what getting high was. Just knew that made me feel good. Um, and I kind of pieced all this stuff together because I actually had a dream or a memory of me playing soccer. I was in youth soccer, wearing an orange jersey, got taken off the game because I was hallucinating. I thought the Mario Brothers were playing with me at the time.
Oh, shit.
And I went back and looked at the picture, and yeah, sure enough, I was about 7 or 8 when that also started. So I was very young when I started using, and my parents at the time, again, didn't think much of it. They were just like, "Hey, I'm sure he's going through a hard time." Um, you know, Albuterol is expensive to buy, certainly back then. And so you probably shouldn't misuse it this way, and just kind of be mindful of it, be cautious of it. But I think that helped me kind of escape the pain and the emotions that I was going through because I didn't really know how to deal with it. That then led
Were
into,
you aware of how he died? Did they tell that? Did they share that with you? Or
yeah, he,
'cause sometimes at that young age, people will, parents will shield the way that it
yeah,
happened. They just, somebody passed and that's it. But you knew how it happened.
yeah, he took out one of the shotguns that he had in the family and
Jeez.
shot himself in the chest with it.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty aggressive way to do it. And my uncle, um, who has also passed, and probably related to those experiences, was the one that found him in the backyard.
Mm.
So that was my mom's younger brother, one of the younger brothers. And yeah, I think I was the only one that was told that, because all the other um, kids weren't outside of maybe my sister at the time. Then I don't think there was any other grandkids yet. There might have been maybe one, um, and they were all much younger than me, so I don't think it really mattered to
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that also kind of shook me a bit too. I was really angry at him for a long time. Just like, how could you just leave like that? Like, how could you just give up and not want to participate in my life anymore, not want to participate in all of our lives anymore?
Hmm.
Um, and of course, being young, I didn't understand all of the emotions that might go into making that decision. Um, but yeah, I was really mad at him.
Yeah.
Um, growing up was kind of rough too. My father was one of 11. Um, his dad also happened to pass at 7, or 6, and so he grew up without a father. Um, lot of aggression in the family. They used to parent themselves, and either they were beating up somebody or getting beat up, and everything was fought for. They were super poor. Grew up in a place called Kankakee, Illinois, which was at one point voted the worst place to live in Illinois.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember one time we were there for Christmas. There was a murder that happened literally a block down from us. We saw all the ambulance and everything show up. We heard the shots.
Mm.
It's like on Christmas Day. I was just like, yeah, it's not a nice spot to be in.
Yeah. Rough.
Yeah. So that's how he grew up, and because of it, he was a tough kid. Um, Unfortunately, because he didn't have a father and somebody to help guide him through those emotions as well, he was also a pretty tough father. Very physically aggressive with me, very violent with me. Didn't really know how to deal with, again, being so young and my emotions, not knowing how to deal with that. So if I acted out, he acted out. And, over the years, it turned into wrestling matches, fist fights, other things. And yeah, it was just was one of those things where, because of it, it made me very aggressive as a kid as well.
Mm-hmm.
Even fueled more of that anger, that violence. Um, and I kept turning to drugs as a way to deal with that emotion. And so going through it, then it started with alcohol as kind of the next thing, testing that out, drinking. Um, I like the feeling of it. I like feeling, powerful when I drank, confident when I drank. But I was still pretty young, and so didn't know how to do that. I mean, certainly the first time I threw up quite a bit, drank gin, and to this day, gin like still
Left a
just
mark.
just the smell out of it
You
is
left
like,
a mark there.
yeah, I'm like, man, that's awful. Um, but yeah, and then and then of course, growing up, it was interesting. I had friends, so to speak, on both sides of the tracks. I had kids that I knew from very, very young age, you know, 4 or 5 years old when we first started school, whose older brothers were already into drugs, dealing drugs, that kind of stuff. Very poor. But then I also had friends that were from very wealthy families. And so I fit both into those mixes. It was very comfortable for me. Um, and it was interesting as I got older, I realized that dynamic was very unique.
Mm-hmm.
These were the kind of kids that if they showed up at your party and they didn't know you, you were going to get robbed.
Mm-hmm.
Your TV's gone, your silverware is gone, like all that shit. Your jewelry. Sorry, I don't know if we're allowed to say that, but
no, you're allowed to say whatever on Please Call Me Crazy.
Perfect. But
thanks for asking. But this is the No Holds Bar podcast.
Perfect. I love it. Good. And just be me.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, but because of growing up with them and knowing the families and all that stuff, they had a respect for me. So I could play both roles. I could play the jock. I could play, the prep. I could play the stoner. It didn't really matter to me, and I had such a mix of friends.
Mm-hmm.
And it made it unique too because I knew how to converse, how to interact, how to manipulate the systems to kind of get what I wanted.
Mm.
And I got good at it. And so I was able to, get through school fumbling around, using excessively, while also then having the jocks come up to me and say, hey, we need drugs, we need weed. Even though in front of the girls and everything else, they'd kind of be like, oh yeah, this guy, he's a drug addict. Don't mess with this kid. So it was always one of those interesting aspects where kind of wanted to beat the shit out of them all the time, but then took advantage of them and marked up the price on the weed and everything else, et cetera,
Right.
considerably. So I was like, all right, that's how I'm going to pay you back. I also met a guy in high school who ended up being in one of my classes. He had like a rare brain disease, and his skull would grow into his medulla oblongata. So every couple of years, they'd have to go in and like shave a part of his skull.
Jeez.
Yeah, very painful.
It's intense.
Because of that, they gave him all different kinds of drugs. Some were new, like opiates that they just invented. Some were like THC pills that they were just coming out with. And then also, they give him sleeping pills because he was doped up, or they give him stomach pills because he couldn't digest everything. I happened to be really good friends with him. And he was a year older than me. I knew him and his younger brother. Spent a lot of time at their house. It's kind of like the safe house to do all the things. But every day he would show up at school with a cocktail, those little like medicine tubs of pills, and he would just hand it to me and no questions asked, down it. Some days I was totally alert, flying high. Some days I don't remember, blacked out, school went by.
What were the teachers saying at this? You blacked out? Were they kind of did they just kind of pick you up and kind of take you to the nurse's office and
I mean,
call your parents? You end up at home or
sometimes. I mean, sometimes I would just skip school. Sometimes
okay.
I'd get like so high in the morning, I just like stay out in the parking lot or go to a friend's house. I'm like, I can't do this.
Right.
Yeah. And other days then too, like, I was playing sports. I was playing hockey. And then started to get into lacrosse and wrestling as well. But hockey was kind of my main sport.
And you were good at it, right?
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. And that was, that was kind of my thing. But man, I remember the first time I got stoned. I think I was like 12, 13, and I was smoking weed with a bunch of those kids that I had mentioned, their older brothers as well. And first couple of hits, I got, I think we smoked a joint or something like that. Like, didn't feel anything. Now, I had a hockey game later that day. And my gear was in the basement in like the laundry room or something. I had to go get that. And somebody else's family was going to pick me up because my parents were working. Um, and man, I remember this to this day. It didn't kick in at the first time when I smoked. So then we went and smoked again. And I remember I was sitting in like a neighbor's yard, like a couple houses down.
Mhm.
And the family comes up to pick me up. And I was so high. They're like, hey, the game's coming up. We're here to pick you up. We're going to go out and get some food first and, go back and get your gear. And they're like, you want to hop in the car? We'll just drive. I'm like, no, it's like I'm just live down the street. And I swear to God, they like drove next to me, and I'm pretty sure it took me like a half an hour to walk like 4 houses down. I was so stoned. And I was like shuffling around and in the basement cleaning all this stuff up. And then we went out to eat, and I swear I ordered like, my friend knew that I was stoned. Like, he's like, dude, are you high? I'm like, yeah, bro, so high. And I like ordered like half the menu, just like crushed all this food. I don't know what the parents were thinking. They must have thought I was crazy.
Mhm.
But yeah, I was able to kind of play through it. And I remember that game too. I got hit so hard. I went where you jump over the boards, there's that where the ice, the barrier picks up right there. And I hit that going into it and just like did a 180 backwards. And the coaches and everybody are like, oh God, is he okay? And I just like popped right back up. I'm like, bro, I'm perfect. I'm feeling great. That's just rocked.
Were you sore later?
Oh my God,
You
I was hurting them for like 2 days later. Yeah, for sure, 3 days. It was
yeah.
horrible, but it's just kind of how I went through it. And
Yeah.
high school was kind of a blur. I mean, I dated this girl on and off for a couple years. Same girl, different crews of friends. Um, but yeah, it wasn't like the best couple of years of my life. It was My GPA was shit. It was horrible. But somehow, like the last year, I was able to kind of put some things together, knowing that college was coming up, and I was
Mhm.
like, all right, it'd be cool if I could play for a school. And fortunately, I was able to get into Penn State. And when I got out there, they were putting together the team, like one of the first teams for the D1 programs, and
Yeah.
I remember
So
getting
this
pulled
one
out.
this is when Penn State was just first starting their D1
Yep,
hockey program.
exactly,
What
exactly.
year
Yeah,
was this around?
like 2002,
Okay.
2003,
Got it.
something like that. And so then, as I was going through that, I remember getting pulled out of class. Um, and it was like 2 weeks into class, and I was like, "Shit, I'm already in trouble." I don't know why I'm getting pulled out of class, but it actually was the coach. And the coach was like, "Hey, we watched you play. We know, you could play. Um, Dry line starts in 2 weeks. You wanna try out for the team?" And I'm like, "Yeah, for sure."
Mhm.
And so then I tried my best to like focus. I'm like, "All right, I'm not gonna use drugs. I'm gonna chill out on the drinking.
Mhm.
Try to like get into dry land." So I did that. Did well for it. I was still smoking here and there, but trying to clean up as best I could. And then practices are starting. I'm playing and really quick into that. The whole dynamic of that school, right, is everybody on the sports team partying heavy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Basketball player, football players,
Yeah.
doesn't matter. We were drinking
All the
heavy.
Big Ten
Oh
schools.
my God.
Yeah.
And I mean, we got caught in the dorm room, and it was like several football players, several basketball players, me and another hockey guy. Um, we were hotboxing in the room. Smoke is billowing out in the dorms, and we got caught by the chief of police. and he came in with a couple other officers, and they closed the door, locked it, and they were like, "Look, we love you guys. We all know who you are.
Yeah.
You all have scholarships here. You're playing on Big Ten. Like, we don't want to get you in trouble, and we know that if we fall through with this, you guys might not play ever again. So we're gonna let this slide. It's totally cool. Please just go down to the park and do there. We won't harass you at all. You have our privilege to go down there and get high, get drunk, whatever you want.
Don't do that shit here.
Just don't do this shit in the dorms. Yeah. Because we can't then go down to the person that isn't on the football team or the hockey team or whatever it is and then say, hey, all that kind of stuff.
You're forcing our hand.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So we just, we get slap on the wrist. It was never an issue. Needless to say, I was failing out of school, missing classes all the time. I mean, maybe getting like C's and D's at best. I started missing practices because I was getting drunk or went to a festival or whatever it was. And I'm like, oh shit, we had a tournament this weekend. Like, didn't show up.
This is in college.
Yeah.
Shit.
And first semester too. The coaches then benching me.
Yeah, of course.
Because not showing up to practice. Yeah. You don't show up to practice, you don't play in the game. It's like, you're riding the bench, boy. And it started getting frustrating for me. And eventually kicked me off the team. They're like, you're just kind of a liability. We could fill this with somebody else. That was a big one for me. It also happened to be that my roommate at the time was a pitcher at the University of Miami. He's from Pennsylvania originally. Tore his shoulder. He's a year older than me. Tore his shoulder on scholarship. Couldn't play anymore. Started getting heavy into drugs himself. Prescription at first for the shoulder issues.
Mm-hmm.
And then
big time gateway is injuries.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then, prescriptions from that. Then it was cocaine down there in Miami.
Of course.
And then eventually he came back to Pennsylvania and got into heroin.
Oof.
And he then happened to be my roommate at Penn State. And again, I don't know if it was a God thing or not, but coincidence about the two of us being together. So quickly into that, he was one of the guys I first did heroin with.
Wow.
And I remember shooting up with him at his house, and I was done at that point. Like, I was hooked. Like, that was the drug that I was going to be using from then on. So as I'm doing all this stuff, my friend from back home, who I knew, came home during like Christmas break or something like that, touched base with him. He was worried about me. Talked to my parents and said, hey, your son's using heroin. And they're like, no way. And he put down a little vial. He said, no, this is from the day that we hung out. Like, he's using heroin and you need to get him some help. As I was going through high school, I lost a friend almost every 6 months from drugs or suicide related to drugs.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
One kid shot himself. Another kid just hung out with him like 2 weeks prior, and then he went out for spring break, came back home, hung himself. Girl that I knew, briefly dated, overdosed. Another kid overdosed. Like, it was happening a lot. And so then going back, my friend knew all these people as well, and he was worried that I was going to be the next person on that list. My parents, in disbelief, were kind of going through a hard time themselves, marriage-wise, and possibly on the brink of divorce. And I think a lot of that had to do with the stress of me and other things going on in their own lives too. But my dad ended up coming, and I remember walking back to the dorms, and he was standing there in my room, and I'm like, what are you doing here? He's like, pack up your things, we're going home. And we went down and we talked to the principal, who was very gracious again, probably because I was playing sports there, but said, hey, we're going to wipe your record clean. No record of you being at Penn State. No issues then in the future. If you want to come back, we'd welcome you to come back. We know you're going through a hard time. We hope that, all this stuff works out. Let us know how we can help. And truthfully, it was a blessing because I was failing every single class.
Yeah.
So my transcripts would have been shit at that time. So they picked me up and I came back home, and I continued to use. I was, hey, maybe I'll go to a counselor or a therapist or something like that and talk to them and try to convince them not to put me in treatment at the time. Um, and so the therapist kind of worked for a while, and I was going down to the west side of Chicago, scoring dope, and a lot of sketchy circumstances. Not good places to be.
Yeah. Dangerous.
Very dangerous. Yeah. And yeah, and most of the times I stood out quite a bit, and and I mean, honestly, like the police were like, "We know you're not from here. Like you shouldn't be here. So either you're scoring drugs or you're lost." And most of the time it was you're scoring drugs, and then they would arrest you. So it was always like sketchy place to be. And but I had my usual spot. I'd go down there, pick up some dope. Buddy of mine, the younger brother of that guy that had the brain issues, was getting crack, and we would just share on the way home.
Mm.
So I was shooting up dope, which he didn't know. He thought I was just snorting at the time, and also then using crack from time to time with him. It was a mess, man. It was a mess, and started getting into dealing mushrooms. Found a connection while I was down there with a guy that had that. Only one to have it in the area where we were. And so I was kind of the main point of contact, and other people with drugs would either then trade me for, ounces of weed for mushrooms. But I was running several pounds of that every week, going through that stuff. Kept it in the hood of my car. Yeah. And I remember the week leading up to essentially that last day of me using, I'd taken about 2 ounces of mushrooms myself.
Oof.
In that week,
Mm.
while then using heroin, while then smoking weed, while then taking other pills and drinking. And at the end of that whole week, I'd been up most nights, couldn't sleep because I'm hallucinating.
Yeah.
It's like 5 o'clock in the morning. I remember smoking this bowl, and I kept hitting it and hitting it. I'm like, I'm not getting high. I don't understand what's going on. And sure enough, like eventually those old like TV screens, it was like black and white fuzz kind of thing in my eyes, and I couldn't see anymore. And all of my muscle function in my body just cramped up, and I froze and I collapsed in the front yard. And the next thing I know, I got a friend of mine, bigger guy, come up from behind me and, kind of tilted me up, slid me into his chest and started pumping my chest. And he was yelling at me to breathe. And eventually I kind of came through, and I could hear his voice subtly, and I started breathing, and he saved my life.
Wow.
Yeah. And so at that point I was like, all right, I think this is it. I think
I hit the line now.
yeah,
Yeah.
I need to get help.
Wow.
So I went back and I talked to my parents, and I said, I don't know what I need to do. I need some kind of treatment. Like therapy isn't working anymore. And I need to go for a long time. I just knew it. Like I needed to be away for a long time, because everything that I knew for more than I'd been alive, just, the times that I'd been sober versus the time that I've been using was like 2/3 of my life. That's all that I knew. All
At
the
this time, you're
friends.
about what age? 22, 20?
No, I was 19.
19? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And, yeah, I mean, it was just my whole circumstance, all my friends, all my connections, like everything was around drugs and alcohol.
Wow.
I remember telling my friends, hey, don't worry, like I'll stop using. I won't be able to smoke weed or anything, but when we get back, we can drink. It'll be fine. I also remember, the only times that I would ever drink, I blacked out completely doing it. I mean, we made this PVC piped or rubber tube piped beer bong. We could put a whole 6-pack in it and crush it in one swig.
Mhm.
You know, we just do that like 7:30 in the morning and then go to class. So I'm like, probably not a good idea to drink too. Yeah. Probably abuse that privilege as well. But yeah. And I struggled. I went through like 5 or 6 treatment centers. Hazelden Betty Ford was the first one that I went through here in Plymouth. But even before that, my parents didn't know I was using heroin again, so they put me at this place in like Two Harbors, Minnesota.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be a 30-day trek, one-on-one. Um, Unfortunately, I was detoxing from heroin, and the night before I got there, the owner's dogs had been eaten by a wolf pack that's been running around.
Oh, yeah.
So they're like, "Here's a bucket, like a paint can bucket. Throw up into this if you need to throw up."
Move this over for me a little bit. Just
Yeah,
this
yeah,
mic. Yeah, right.
yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Throw up into that if you need to throw up, because if you don't, we might have this wolf pack coming in. I'm like, you guys are fucking nuts. This is crazy. I'm like detoxing from heroin, carrying a bucket around to throw up in, staying in a freaking tent, like in the middle of the woods and nowhere with this guy.
With a pack of wolves on
With a
my
pack of wolves in my ass. And I'm like, this is the stupidest shit ever. Like, and I made it like a day and a half, and I'm drooling on myself. And I'm like, dude, I can't do this anymore. And then they found out that I was also detoxing. So they put me in this small little hospital. This hospital, their experience of detoxing from heroin was reading it in their medical books when they went through school. That was
Okay.
their only experience.
Yeah.
So I was their first patient. And, they're following the protocol, giving me like the methadone and everything else. But I was telling them to stop at one point. They were giving me so much, I was like practically unconscious. I remember then they fed me like this sundae of ice cream, and I couldn't even get it in my mouth. I was just like spilling it all over my face. I was so fucked up. And so my dad ended up coming up. My dad's an ER doc by trade.
Okay.
And so he had a lot of experience in the medical, and being in Chicago, he saw a lot of hard stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So he came up and he spent a week with me helping me detox. And he essentially just walked into the hospital and said, hey, here's my credentials. Like, I'm going to walk him through it. And they said, cool, because we don't know what we're doing.
Mm.
And fortunately, it was a little hospital that they allowed him to do that. But yeah, he stayed with me, and that's then when I got checked into Hazelden. So I spent a good month at Hazelden and started to like figure out shit.
Hazleton, for people that don't know, is a world-renowned
Yeah.
drug rehab and treatment facility program here in Minnesota, right?
Yeah, correct.
World famous.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and they have two main facilities, but then also out in California, a couple other facilities. But they
Mhm.
had a youth facility in Plymouth, Minnesota. And then they also have one in Center City, Minnesota as well. But yeah, one of the best.
Yeah.
Been around for, this year is their 75th year. So one of the oldest as well.
Yep.
So my parents thought, hey, that's a good establishment and has good brand recognition, good track record. And it was a good introduction to what it meant, because I knew nothing about getting sober. I knew nothing about AA or any of this stuff. I thought people were crazy when they told me I was never going to use again. And, but I also knew that I had to do something different, because if I didn't, I wasn't going to be around for very long. Just so happened that one of the roommates that I had also was from the town next door, dating a girl who dropped off a bag of weed in the woods to us on Halloween. And being an idiot that I was, I went out and smoked some weed. That totally ruined my experience for getting high ever since, because I had to then sit in a treatment facility with counselors while I was stoned, trying not to be stoned. And I was just like, this is stupid. Like, this sucks. I don't want to do this anymore. I also got into some trouble with a girl, which you're not supposed to fraternize. And so they pulled me into the office. I was supposed to go to this place called Grey Wolf Ranch out in Washington as the next step. And they're like, hey, we know that you used. We know that you were with this girl in the bathroom, all this stuff. And I'm like, nope, didn't do it. They're like, okay, well, you got to pee in this cup. And so I peed in the cup and I tested negative. And they were like, shit.
Okay.
Yeah. And I knew I was lying through my teeth, but they didn't have any proof.
Yeah. System is a system.
Yeah. So, of course, they sent me out to Grey Wolf, the next place. And for those that don't know, Grey Wolf Ranch is located in Port Townsend, Washington, which is in the Upper Peninsula of Washington. So from Seattle, it's a several-hour commute, and you usually got to take like a ferry across the channels there and then drive up there. So I had quite a few hours, just me and this tech from the place, where I was sitting there, and they were like, "Look, we know everything that led up to this. So if you want to be honest with us at any point, probably a good time to do it." And I'm just sitting there for probably like a good hour, just thinking like, shit. And I broke down and I'm like, yeah, you know what? I used. And I was with this girl. Everything that they said was true. They said, cool. Well, here's the deal. You have to be at least 3-4 weeks sober before you come to this place because everybody else is. But because you're honest, we're going to give you an option to come back. And we're going to talk to your parents now and let them know all this stuff. My mom at the time then had done. She's like, I don't want to talk to you anymore. And my dad, I just remember him reaming me out in this office, listening to him on the phone. He was so pissed.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, we're not helping you anymore. You're on your own. Like, you figure it out. I had a couple grand left in my bank account from selling drugs. And they said, hey, there's this place called The Retreat back in Minnesota. At the time, it was in Minnetrista in the old Pillsbury farmhouse. Now it's located in Wayzata, downtown. And I remember walking out to this, like, it's called a yurt, like a little meditation room for this meeting at the end of the night. My parents wanted nothing to do with me, and they said they weren't going to talk to me again, and that was the end of that. And these groups said, here, we can either give you a bus ticket, and we'll drop you off tomorrow with the couple grand that you have. You can figure it out. Or we can see if we can get you a bed for the amount of money that you have, and we'll get you a plane ride back there and get you checked in. And I surrendered at that time. I was like, I'm done fighting this stuff. I don't want to do this life anymore. And I remember at that moment, there was such clarity. It felt like this huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders, and I didn't have to do this anymore by myself. And I said to him, I'm like, look, whatever you tell me to do, that's what I'll do. If you tell me I need to go here, that's where I'll go. He said, cool. I like that attitude. And, within a day, I was back in Minnesota. So I spent a couple weeks at the retreat. And again, from the foundation that I got at Hazelden and now going into the retreat, I had a good understanding as to what it meant, to go to like AA programs, sober, all this kind of stuff. And it really clicked for me. And again, I was still 19 at the time. I got it tattooed here. So my sobriety date is the day after Halloween, November 1st, 2002. Yeah. And since then, I've had over 21 years of continuous sobriety.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amen. Congratulations, man.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's about as crazy of a backstory as you could possibly have. Let's talk about what you're doing now.
Yeah.
'Cause, I can just see the title in my head, and it's just, former hockey player, deals with drug abuse and recovery and been sober, and now it's climbing Mount Everest. Probably should have led with that. That would have got some people hooked in the beginning, but we don't like to clickbait on this podcast. We just talk about things as they are. I was introduced or told about you because of what you're doing now.
Yeah.
And your decision to climb Mount Everest and that journey you've been on. You climbed a couple other mountains.
I have.
Tell me about that and how you got into that.
Sure.
Or tell me about the sobriety and kind of briefly about the companies that you started, how you got into the company piece, and then what made you decide to start climbing mountains.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So after I finally got sober, I was scared to go back to school, but I wanted to finish. Penn State was a horrible experience for me. And then I tried to do community college when I was back at home. I was high all the time, so I don't remember much of that either. So after I'd gone through treatment again, I was still back in Minnesota. I heard about this program at Augsburg University. They had this thing called the Step Up program. And the Step Up program was created maybe 25 years ago, a little bit longer. And basically, it was a very comprehensive program where kids like me could come in and they could have meetings associated with it, counselors there, sober dorms, all of the resources to make college life a little bit easier. And as we know, colleges are a tough spot. I mean, especially for younger kids trying to experiment, first time on their own, all those kind of things. And for me at this point, I was just like, man, I just want to get this right. And I had looked at some other places, but being in Minnesota, knowing that this was probably the safest bet, I just said, sure, let's just try it out. So I got into Augsburg and I started the program. It's a much smaller school than Penn State, of course. Penn State, I remember classes, they were like 1,500 deep, auditoriums.
Yeah.
And Augsburg was like 35 in a class. So it was much better experience for me overall. And I think that the teachers really appreciated the fact that they were like, hey, these kids that are in this step-up program are usually kids that want to be here, want to put in the effort, do well in school, and typically have a higher GPA than the average of the school in general. So it was a good environment for me. At Penn State, I happened to be studying architectural engineering. That's what I got into. At Augsburg, they had neither architecture nor engineering. So while I was in treatment, I had this old guitar that I found in a Led Zeppelin chord book. And so I taught myself how to play guitar because I had a lot of free time, and ended up getting into the music program at Augsburg, which they are known for. In addition to that, I also then did psychology as another dual major because I wanted to learn more about why I was doing all the things that I was doing, especially from a young age, and really kind of hopefully deal with them. And ended up going through that circumstance, was able to graduate in 3 years. So the last year, I did the first 2 years normally, but the last year I wanted to try to make up some time from Penn State and these other things. So I ended up taking night school, weekend school, and day school to the max. And I did 2 years in 1 year in terms of credits.
Wow.
Most people thought, you're pretty crazy, you shouldn't do that. But I got a 4.0 that year.
Wow.
And graduated really well with honors. And so then I made up that time and I was like, sweet, now I got some time.
Can I just say, first off, you got to be a badass motherfucker to do school 7 days a week and still get a 4.0.
Yeah.
That's no joke.
It was a lot. It was a lot.
It's no joke.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah. I mean, it was a lot, but again, I was driven. I didn't want to fuck up anymore. I wanted to really prove that I could do this. And I knew that I had some intelligence. I just needed to apply it. And I think truthfully too, for me personally, I found that being busier, having more activities in my life, keeps me centered, keeps me focused. And where that idle time comes in, then I'm floating around late all, it's those things. Yeah. So it was a good environment. And again, the teachers were really great and supportive of that. And being sober certainly helped. So I'm about 3 years sober at this time. And I met a girl, kind of a funny story. I knew another guy. He was gay. He went through Grey Wolf a little bit before me. So he knew of me. I knew of him. He would work out in the gym all the time. I would work out in the gym all the time. He kept trying to pick me up. And I was like, dude, I appreciate that. I'm not gay, all respect, but no, we're not gonna hang out. Mm-hmm. One time he invited me and he was like, hey, we're going out to White Bear Lake. It was over the summer. I was working in the library. We're going to do some jet skiing, tubing, all that stuff. Why don't you just come out? I have potential job opportunity. I introduce you to these other guys that own a club downtown. Totally casual. I'm like, all right, I don't have anything else going on. Fine, let's do it. I showed up. He kind of embellished on the party and the people there. I I think, one of two straight guys there, and there was only like two girls there. So it was totally full gay party. And, I was
With a
kind of
couple
like,
of their female
yeah,
friends.
yeah, I was kind of like eye
Typical
candy.
Minnesota.
I was kind of eye candy for
Yeah.
everybody. I'm like, all right, you totally set me up on this one. But,
mhm.
but there was a girl, she got off the boat, and something about her I just I felt very comfortable with. And I didn't even shake her hand. I just went up to her and hugged her.
Wow.
It's kind of odd. Yeah. And we started, shortly after started dating, I found out that it was actually his roommate. He had picked her up from New York. She was there for Fashion Week, came home. Um, Also just kind of got out of a relationship, wasn't really looking for anything. And just like, all right, I'll go to this party too. And we just happened to meet. And we started hanging out, started really connecting well. And just didn't like leave each other's side. We ended up traveling quite a bit. We did a road trip out to visit some friends in the East Coast, all the way back to then Michigan to visit my family back there. And I remember spending almost a whole month with her in the car, and I'm like, I'm still not bored. So I know there's something special about this girl.
Yeah.
We can keep talking, we can sleep out of the car, cheap motels, whatever, on a couch.
Yeah.
She doesn't bore me yet. So
That's a good sign.
it was a good sign.
Yeah.
It was a good sign. It was the first time ever too where I'm like, yeah, there's something different about this. So I'm dating her, and she never had a cycle, a period when we were dating. Actually, the first 8 or 9 months. And she'd always been very thin from modeling, and doctors, she went a couple years sometimes without having a cycle. And so the doctors are like, yeah, if you want to have kids, you might need help. So we never thought anything of it. Well, needless to say, we get pregnant during this time. And on the day I'm graduating, she wakes up earlier than me because she has this dream that she's pregnant. So she takes a test, and it turns up positive.
Mm.
And she's holding it in the whole day. And I have to tell you, graduating from college, especially the way I did it, and after all the experience before, was one of the highest days without drugs in my life.
Yeah.
I felt like a rock star. I was so proud. My parents were there. Her parents were there, all this stuff, friends of the family. And I remember coming back from the graduation ceremony, and I'm still wearing my robes. And we're going to get undressed to then throw in some other stuff to go out to dinner with my folks and her folks and all that. And she starts telling me about this dream. And she's like, yeah, we had this dream, and in this dream I'm pregnant, and I started taking, and I'm like, listening. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But at some point, she clicked into hey, this is reality, not a dream anymore. And she showed me the test, and I'm like, holy shit, you're pregnant. I'm going to be a dad.
Mm-hmm.
And that rocked my world, man. I was not planning on any of that happening. And I remember sitting at the dinner, and I'm white as a ghost. And my parents probably thought I was just in shock from graduating, but I didn't have anything to say. I'm just absorbing it.
How old are you right now?
I'm 22 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I told her, because she's like, you don't have to stay. I know we're not married. I can do this on my own with my family. But I also remember the experience of not having my dad when I was born and being around for the first couple of years. And I promised myself that if I ever had this happen to me, that I was going to stay. And I told her that. I said, look, I'm not going anywhere. We're going to make this work. You might not want to be with me forever, but I'm going to be around for this kid's life. And if that means you're going to be in Minnesota, I'm going to be in Minnesota too. She said, okay. And so I ended up telling my parents, and at the age of 23, I had my first daughter, Nora.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it really kind of gave me a huge sense of purpose.
Changes you, doesn't it?
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
It was amazing. And it made us a family. And shortly after that, then I asked her to be my wife. She didn't want to get married, cliche, while she was pregnant. And we ended up getting married back in Evanston. Yeah, I didn't know what I was going to do at the time. I had that extra year, thinking to myself, hey, maybe we'll go to St. Thomas, spend a year on an island, just chill out, travel a little bit, learn about each other. But it kind of accelerated all that. I had some friends getting into law school, and I hadn't really thought about it, but I knew that I wasn't going to be like a professional musician, and I wasn't going to be like a licensed therapist through psychology. Um, so I started considering it, and I was like, all right, maybe I'll go to law school too. So I started studying for the LSATs, and ended up taking the test. The first test I did not do well. It's funny. I'm like sitting in the test. You're not even supposed to bring in your phone. She's like about to have a kid, and she's like, "You need to keep your phone on." I'm like, "I can't keep my phone on." She's like, "But I might go into labor." I'm like, "Holy shit!" Like,
It's like it's really turned into a movie script now.
it
But
really is. But yeah, I'm serious, and I'm like so stressed out trying to take this test. I'm like, she can. Like, I just kept checking my phone. I'm like, "Don't call me, don't call me." Oh shit, I'm running out of time. So I totally bombed it, and so then we had Nora. She was actually born New Year's Eve. It was kind of a fun birthday.
yeah,
And so then I ended up taking it again like February after that and did much better and applied. Ended up clerking for a federal court judge back in Chicago before I got into law school. And when I got into law school, um, again, kind of getting into it the way that I did, I wasn't sure that I wanted to be an attorney. So I thought to myself, hey, maybe I'll do business school as well. I got into Chicago, Kent School of Law at the time, and looked at, it was newer, but a JD MBA program. There weren't a lot of campuses doing that kind of thing at the time. At first, I was thinking, I live in Evanston. Maybe I'll try to go back to Northwestern where their school was there. And I started to get into that, and they're like, well, you're going to have to take the GMATs and like do all the business stuff or something like that, and then go back through. And I'm like, well, I'm already a year into law school. I got a 6-month-old kid. That's not going to work. So
Ain't
then I
making
went,
sense,
yeah. So then I went and talked to their school, and they're like, yeah, you're already in our law school. All you have to do is apply, but your grades are good, and you should be able to get in. And so I did that.
So you're doing well in law school too.
Doing well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I ended up doing the 4-year JD MBA. I graduated in the top 1% of my class with the honor society of that. And it was pretty cool. We waited to have another kid. I wanted to be able to finish school because I was doing, again, same kind of thing, full day law school, nights business school. I remember pushing chairs in the library to take naps between the night and the day classes, and it was a lot. I was doing like 14-hour days, and my wife at the time was doing the only kind of job that made sense, which was like bartending in the evenings, because then I could go to school during the day and then be home for the kid at night. So, yeah, and we made ends meet, and we got through it. I started out being overqualified for most jobs, and I'm like, look I work from the bottom. Just give me a job.
Yeah.
And eventually, I got into this private equity business from a friend of my father's, and they were getting into real estate, organic real estate, buying conventional farmland, flipping it into organic farmland. And so I helped them grow, set up their board structures, a lot of their PPMs, all of the legal stuff, but then also helped do a lot of business relationship stuff, and really liked growing the businesses and the business development. But as the businesses were growing, I kept getting pigeonholed into being the attorney. And I didn't have as much fun doing that. So eventually my father was doing some other stuff in his medical practices. He had switched gears from the ER to vein practices and had a partner that was just screwing him over, taking money on the side and then having other people do the work. And the work was shit and expensive. And so I came in, I said, look, I can do an analysis of this, maybe help out until you find somebody to run it for you. But at the same time, I was able to cut their marketing budget in half, increase revenues 30% the first year, and continue to grow. And it seemed to be a good fit. So then other businesses are calling in saying, hey, who's doing your marketing? And my dad was always like, oh, yeah, it's my son. I'm like, all right, maybe I could like parlay this into a real business and make it more legitimate. So I asked him, I said, hey, if I take on some of these other businesses, would you be okay with that? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. As long as I'm your best client. So, yeah. And so 10 years ago, around this time, actually, I started a marketing agency.
Mm.
And from that, I got to meet a lot of different people. I ended up opening up offices in Colombia. So I have an office in Bogota and Medellin, Colombia as well. And all of our like development staff and creative director is down there. And then I had an office out in the West Loop of Chicago for a long time, co-office sharing space, actually out of the Soho House for a long time. And yeah, and just continued to grow it and was able to like take on business, not just nationally, but internationally. But in starting all of that, my wife, even when I first met her, was like, "Why are you going to law school? Like, you don't seem like you're going to be a lawyer. Like, you should go out and maybe start a Grey Wolf Ranch or do something like that to help people." And I realized that I'm like, well, my father was a professional. I should become a professional and follow that kind of pathway. But I learned quickly that I was going to do something else. I was going to be an entrepreneur. Um, and I also wanted to have something legitimate to give other people. I think it's one thing if you're like first starting out, especially in AA or any of these things, and you're new, your story is unique and it helps keep people in the rooms oftentimes, as I shared earlier. But in order to help other people, you need to have the second half to that story, right? Or at least a substantial amount of it where you've done something outside of just use or, mess up the other fucking parts of your life.
Right.
So I wanted to create my own story. And my father had climbed Kilimanjaro when I was in high school with a group of guys that we knew from the gym and all those things, and good dudes, and all had run successful businesses as well. And like, man, this is a sweet trip. Like, it's really inspirational. And I'm like, maybe someday I'll do that with him or go and do it myself. And over the years, things are going on, and we ended up moving from Chicago to Minnesota about 5 or 6 years ago. Her family's still here. My wife's family's still here. And then afterwards, my parents moved up here to be close to the grandkids. I now have 4 children.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. Me too. Same number. 4.
There you go. I
Yeah.
love it. I love it.
2 and 2. 2 boys, 2 girls. What?
I have 3
Yeah, you have 3
girls and
girls
then
and
the
one
one
boy.
boy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was nervous on the last one too, man. But it's a good number. It's a good number. But yeah, it just, I moved up here, and then I kind of got stagnant in my life. Like, I doing well in the business, continue to grow each year, build the teams, and I would help sponsor some young guys, hire guys that were in the program. One of the guys that's running my business now, especially while I do this climb, he's also in the program. So I've always had a lot of respect. I served on the board at Augsburg for the Step Up team for about 10 years, helped them do fundraising for their scholarships. We raised about $10 million for them for an endowment. Helped out with groups like The Retreat. They've been one of our clients for marketing, helping out with Hazelden as well for these programs. So I've always been involved in it to some degree. And I noticed that parents would call me, "Hey, my son's having a hard time. Can you talk to him?" Or, "My daughter's having a hard time. Can you talk to her?" But I was sitting there, this is back in 2022, like in April, so about 2 years ago, and I was watching Netflix, and there was this documentary called 14 Peaks. And in that, this group was led by a gentleman named Nimsday, and he was out to show the world that the Nepalese Sherpas were actually some of the best climbers in the world, even though most of the European or American climbers would get the recognition. But they were always led by Sherpas that were from Nepal. And so he went out to summit the 14 highest peaks in the world and set a world record doing so in essentially 6 months, which the guy before them had done it in about 7 years. And then he went and did it again last year. And oftentimes without oxygen, and he climbed K2 with his team in the winter, which was the first ever done. And so I was super inspired by that. I was like, man, this is what I want to do. I'd done some rock climbing camps as a kid. My parents used to send me out there. I was very comfortable with ropes, climbing, all that stuff. Watching my dad climb Kilimanjaro, I knew that someday maybe I would do that. And so sure enough, I just reached out social media and I said, hey, how do I get involved in this? Like, is there a program that I can do to come climb with you? And they sent me an email and said, yeah, here's this first climb, you can do it. And so in 2022, at the end of the year, in October, November, I went out to Nepal and I climbed actually 2 mountains. The trip was supposed to be 1 mountain. And maybe I was a little arrogant going out there, but I kind of like sized up the crew. It's like, I don't know, this seems like maybe this is going to be easy. I hadn't even climbed a mountain yet. And I'm like thinking these thoughts and like, all right. So as we're like hiking out, people are starting to drop off. Like one guy made it like 3 days into the hikes and just like, I can't do this anymore. And so I'm like, yeah, maybe there's something bigger. And so I started to say, hey, if I want to do another mountain, is there something else I could do since I'm going to be out here? I'm acclimating, all that. And they're like, yeah, actually, there's this mountain called Amadablam. And instead of maybe going to Everest Base Camp with the rest of the crew, you can go and climb that mountain. I said, sweet. So got about 6 of us together from that initial crew that then would potentially go off and do the next one. Now, it's getting more and more challenging for people. The first trip, we ended up losing 2 people during the trip, one of which I was trying to save her life with my other climbing partner. She became very sick from oxygen deprivation, hypoxic, and was on oxygen tanks. And I don't think that she ended up making it from that. And another gentleman went to sleep and didn't wake up again, both related to oxygen. So it was a very challenging experience. And for me, I just try to think about it logically from like what they were feeling, symptoms, all that kind of stuff to rationalize, all right, how do I remove my heart from my throat and not feel so worried about the next trip that's actually known as the technical mountain. So I get out to this mountain.
So wait, tell me,
Yeah.
Now this is a people are probably losing their minds right now. So you go and you climb with this team that's already summited 14 peaks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you go and you just reach out to them social media, you get involved with them, you climb this first mountain. It's like a beginner climb.
Yeah.
And then there's this next mountain that's a little bit more advanced. You take 6 people from that beginner climb. You guys go to the next rung up the ladder of climbs.
Correct.
And on that climb, you lose 2 people on the trip.
Actually, so the beginner mountain they claim is a beginner mountain.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty technically advanced.
Okay.
It was, I mean, I don't know, relatively, like I didn't have a lot of experience in high altitude mountaineering. I certainly did some other mountains, backcountry snowboarding and split boarding in Switzerland with some Burton guys out there and some friends, other stuff in Colorado. So I had a lot of backcountry experience, a lot of alpine touring, all that stuff. So I felt very comfortable with it. Even at Grey Wolf, we learned about like avalanche training, did a lot of treks in the Olympic range there, spent weeks in the rain, weeks in the snow. But this was something else because again, once you get past like 19,000 feet, the oxygen quickly depreciates and your body will then react accordingly. And some people really just don't know how to react well.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember a 26-year-old Olympic athlete who struggled quite a bit, and I helped him reach the first summit. And this other gentleman was from Scotland, I believe, and he had no experience in these kind of mountains. But I noticed that certain things, like he was breathing out of his mouth versus his nose when we were doing acclimation days and things like that. So I'm like, all right, that was probably what was going on with him. But he died instead of summiting that first day, or that last day on the first mountain. He stayed in the base camp, and so we all kind of went up, came back, and we came back down. He was still there, fine. During this time, the other girl that I had mentioned, she was really struggling. She was on oxygen tanks. They were trying to get her down as quickly as possible. I was supposed to hop in a helicopter to fly to the next camp with, a couple of people as we were going. And they said, look, you're gonna take this girl with you. There's gonna be a doctor there. You'll hand her off. He'll be able to take care of her, and then you'll go and meet the manager of this hotel. You'll stay there for the night, and then we'll meet up with you tomorrow. But they also invited this gentleman. They were like, hey, you should go down. Here's an opportunity. If you're not feeling well, you should go down. And again, we don't know how you're feeling, so you got to be honest with us. And if you're still feeling sick or lightheaded or whatever it might be, just go down. Like, take the opportunity. You don't have to hike down. There's a helicopter. It's quick. But we need to get you lower quickly. And he refused. He was like, no, I'm fine. Just going to take a nap before dinner. I'm just a little tired. And so I'm in a helicopter flying with this other girl who, when we get there, there's no doctor in sight. He had gotten called in from another crew. And so then I'm left with her, trying to carry her back to the hotel or the lodge, and ended up staying up the whole night with her and my climbing partner just to try to keep her alive. I'm not a doctor, so I didn't really know what I was doing or how to administer the oxygen or any of that other stuff. So we were trying to just do the best we could, try to get her water, try to get her to eat. But she was just kind of losing her mind. She didn't know what was going on. She was talking in tongues, and just like, she was Polish too, so she didn't speak really any English. But yeah, I mean, just purplish, not good.
Yeah.
While all of this is happening at the base camp, this gentleman didn't wake up. So this is all on the first mountain. This is even before we go to the second mountain.
Wow.
When we go to the second mountain, everybody's in a different spirit at that time because we had essentially lost 2 people. And we're all just kind of quiet walking out there. We sat down and Nims talked to us about it, assessed the situation, again, said, hey, this is why it's important to communicate how you're feeling, because we can't tell. I mean, we can try as best as we can to see and read, and so the girl, we could read the symptoms pretty quickly, but this other guy kept telling us, he kept telling us he's fine, and obviously he was not fine. And so it's like, we can't help you unless you're willing to be honest. So the team that was there before us climbing on the second mountain happened to be the SAS, the British Special Forces. And they spent another month or so there.
What are they doing climbing the mountain?
Well, so
for training?
Yeah, so Nims was actually a Gurkha originally. And then he was the first person, I believe, to become a Gurkha, but then also part of the British Special Forces. So British occupied Nepal. The Gurkhas are part of the British Army or military. It's kind of their front commandos.
Got it.
And so, yeah, he was a part of that group. And so he would take out crews from the British Special Forces to do training, to do high altitude training, things like that. So, yeah, so he, this is the crew, and they had spent like I said, like several weeks more going up to Camp 1, down, Camp 2. Like, they were really acclimating. I was already exhausted from the first mountain that I climbed, and then had to deal with these 2 people dying, well, literally in front of us, essentially. And
psychologically,
that's just
draining.
There was just a lot going on. And they came down from summiting, and they were like, this is one of the hardest things we've ever done in our lives. So I'm kind of freaking out in my head. I'm like, shit. I'm like sizing them up, looking, I'm like, all right, do I have what they have to be able to do this? And sure enough, I mean, I was the only one of the 6 to summit.
Wow. Got a different gear in there.
Yeah. I mean, they were not kidding. It was a very, very technical mountain, more so than Everest, and has a lot of respect in the climbing community.
And what was the name of this mountain?
This one was called Amadablam. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first girl that was going through started getting bubbles in her lungs before she went to base camp, or to Camp 1. They took her back down. Second girl fell, dislocated her elbow, wrist, those kind of things, took her back down. Two guys, actually two French guys at the high camp passed away the night before because there was a storm that came in and they stayed up there too long and then didn't wake back up either.
Explain this now. Now, I'm gonna tell you now. I'm gonna have to bring you on for part 2, where we can just talk about the climbs,
for sure,
and this climb of Everest and the history of Everest and some of that cool stuff. That I'm sure is. I like to. I actually usually like to introduce my guests and then have a kind of part 1, part 2, because the backstory and your backstory is so intricate and so powerful. But you got to tell me now, the two guys they get caught up there in the storm. Get what happens there?
So again,
So this is a part of your 6-person crew on the second mountain.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so they were a little bit before us. And they, from what we were told, again, it was altitude related.
So when you go out on a 6, just as a matter of the mountain climbing piece, you go out on a 6-man team to the second mountain. Are you guys start off together, but you don't necessarily go at the same pace? Is that what I'm kind of?
Yeah, and sometimes they break you up. So it's a Sherpa. It's 1-to-1 ratio. So you have your own Sherpa.
Got you. Okay, now I'm getting it.
We would kind of break up into crews based on how long you had to recover, the trips, those kind of things. And so most of the guys, even in the first crew, they were supposed to go out to Everest Base Camp. They were kind of wrecked after what happened, and so they just decided, hey, we want to go home. Mm-hmm. So half the team just left from that, and we were kind of the last groups to summit that mountain at the year. They were closing down the tents. It was getting into the winter, and it starts to get pretty dangerous. And so they got up there, and again, from the story that I was told, they were it was too cold. They got caught in a storm, and so they ended up staying another night at the high camp, and in doing so, then didn't wake back up. Now, I didn't know this. They didn't tell me this until after I got down. And it all plays into it because my climbing partner and I, he's from India, by the way, but he and I were the only ones to make it to high camp. He started developing a dry cough after the first mountain. And in doing so, when he got up to the second one, and as we're climbing through, started to get sick. And when we finally got to the high camp, he was coughing up blood.
Oof.
Yeah.
From what?
From, again, like, oxygen deprivation, cold air, all those kind of factors.
Is that a common sort of thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And
dry cough comes just from the cold air, and irritation, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's dangerous, though, because it can quickly turn, as we see with the other guy. And so the thought was, all right, you should get back down as quickly as possible. Now, when we got up there, we were also supposed to leave at about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, like 1 o'clock. And we would get up, then summit, and be back down, around 9, 10 o'clock in the morning. So that way then, as the sun's really kind of hitting, we can start making our descent back down to base camp. Like the crew before us, and that's why I prefaced it with the two guys getting caught in the storm. Storm came in again. And so we got stuck in the tent. And we wake up in the middle of the night, start getting ready, and they're like, it's too cold. It's too windy. If we go out, you freeze to death. So we're going to wait this storm out and see if it dies down a little bit, and maybe we'll try like 5 or 6 in the morning. We'll give it 3 or 4 hours. We'll see what happens. Now, it's so cold that your breath creates moisture, which then goes up to the top of the tent, freezes, and then the wind blows it, shakes the tent, and it starts to snow on you inside the tent. That's how cold it is.
Say that again.
So
your breath,
yes. You're warm, right? And
yes.
So you're breathing, and your body heat is creating this heat, like a steam almost. And it starts to then rise to the top of the tent, and it freezes. and it collects as like ice crystals kind of thing. But the wind is like howling, 60, 80 miles an hour, depending on where you're at. And we are on like a tiny ridge. There's no coverage whatsoever. We're totally exposed outside of these tents. And so the tents are like going to fly away. And every time they shake, it rattles the whole thing. And then snow starts coming down from your own moisture. So you wake up in the middle of the night and you got snow all over you, even though you're in a tent. It's crazy. I mean, everything froze. I actually have a funny story to tell you too about this, about everything freezing. So 5, 6 o'clock rolls around and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, we got to go. Like, we can't just like sit here in this tent. Like, this isn't safe. And so I called out to them. I said, look, can we go? And they said, yeah, I think because the sun's going to start coming up, it'll get warmer, let's go. And Preetam, my climbing partner, was like, I can't go. I'm like, you should rest and go back down. So he stayed. I got dressed and started to make the summit. And I have to tell you, it was 10 steps at a time. I mean,
so you're all by yourself now.
It was me and one other Sherpa. That's it. And everybody else is starting to clean up the tents below us.
And the Sherpas now, explain, but just brief, the Sherpas, these people, do they die on these trips, or they just badass?
No. I mean, they're like smoking cigarettes while we're going, and I'm like barely breathing. I mean, these guys are machines. They're like mountain goats.
Different
man.
level.
Oh my God.
Okay.
It's amazing.
Keep going. Okay, keep going.
Yeah. Good crew too. And by the way, like, I would never be able to do this without the Sherpas, for sure. They are amazing. Amazing crew. A lot of respect and love for them. But yeah, so me and my Sherpa, Sandeep, we summited. And I remember yelling at him too. Like, we come up over this ridge and he's like, oh, it's the last one. And then I get over the ridge and it's not the last one. And then there's another one. I'm like, dude, better not fucking be lying. Like, this better be the last one. He's like, I swear to God, this is the last one. But he was doing it on purpose. Like, he was just motivating me to keep going the next one, because I swear I want everything in my body was saying, like, dude, you need to turn around. Like, you're done. You are so done.
Yeah.
So to give you some idea about the intensity of this, the day prior, right, we essentially didn't sleep all night. And we're sleeping on rocks with like negative 40-degree weather, winds blowing 60, 80 miles an hour. It's a storm out. You're freezing your ass off. Like,
worst environment imaginable. You ever seen the movie Armageddon where they're explaining how it's going to be on the asteroid?
Yeah.
And Owen Wilson goes, so the worst environment imaginable. That's cool. Just say that.
Yeah.
Just worst
environment imaginable.
Got it.
Perfect. That's perfect. Yes. And the day prior was essentially the hardest day. And this is why it was a technical climb. We spent 4 hours rock climbing vertically.
Wow. And
then after you're done with that, you reach Camp 3, which then you put on your summit suit and your crampons and your ice axe and all that other stuff. And then you take another 4 hours to essentially ice climb vertically. So it was like almost 2 miles just straight up of vertical climbing.
Whoa, what do you mean?
And
paint the picture for me. Now, there you can paint the picture.
I mean, so let's say you walk up.
Are you harnessed in? Are you strapped?
You're harnessed in.
Yes.
You're harnessed in.
You're not soloing.
And you're on ropes.
Yep.
But, you use this thing called a Jumar. So it's like a hand grip. And you slide it up the rope and it latches. And then you climb, ice axe, whatever it might be, rock climb, slide it up again, go up. Some guys can just shimmy up that way. I was trying to conserve energy on the rock climbing part, so I was trying to rock climb a bit and then use my legs as much as I can. Mm-hmm. But I have to tell you, I mean, by the time we got to camp, like, my abs were buckling. Like, I had to lay flat because they were cramping so much. My forearm was like twisted. My hands couldn't open. You're so nutrient and liquid depleted. I mean, you are dehydrated. You are malnourished. I lost 15 pounds, and I'm not a very big guy to begin with, but I lost 15 pounds on this trip. I mean, you are just toasted. Then you have to do an all-nighter and summit. That's leading into the summit. So as we summit, because we left so late, we got down much, much later than anticipated. And at this point, it's like 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Like we were supposed to be down early in the morning. I am done. I have no more energy whatsoever. Now, although you're strapped in, when you go down and rappel, you have to rappel down all the same vertical stuff that we climbed. But sometimes the distance between the next safety is 40 meters, 100 meters, right? So if you slip and let go of that rope, you could fall 100 meters. And if you fall 100 meters, despite the fact that you're strapped into the rope, you could break your back, you could break your leg, you could break a lot of things. I mean, you're going to slam into something. You're going to have that whiplash. And
100 meters, that's 300 feet.
Yeah, you're going to be toasted. Yeah. Like you are done. And I knew I was having a hard time, like even seeing the rope and grabbing. I was so done that if I went down and I missed, I'm like, I'm not coming home. I got a family to come home to. I can't mess around with this stuff. And so I told him, I said, look, we need to stay here another night. Now, again.
So you spent the night up there where
I didn't know that
somebody
story.
died in the storm.
Yeah.
Wow.
I didn't know that story. So my Sherpa's like, no, we're not doing that. And Nim's is like, dude, you need to come back. Like, I'm like, I cannot physically move anymore. And if I go any further, it's going to get into the dark and I know I'm going to fall. And then I'm going to be stuck up here for the rest of my life in a frozen sleeping bag. Like, it's not happening.
Yeah.
So I said, let's stay. And so they're on comms with us all night from base camp, calling us every hour saying, all right, are you guys okay? I'm like, yes, we're okay. Are you guys okay? Yes, we're okay. But I knew even my Sherpa was scared. He was scared because he was worried something was going to either happen to me or we're going to get caught in a storm again. And fortunately, like 5, 6 o'clock rolls around in the morning. It's pretty early. And we both woke up and I'm like, yeah, let's go. And we went from high camp all the way down to base camp. And we were the last crew. So at this time, as we're going down, there's no more tents below us. There's no safeties. There's no helicopters. Like, we're on our own. And I had this water bottle with 1 liter or so of water from like that morning prior all the way back to the next day. That was it. No real food. They made us this pot of food. It was kind of like cold and frosty by the time we got to it. It was like some rice. And so we each took a couple bites. They made it for me, but I shared it with him, of course, and we took a couple bites, and that was it. That was like camp 2. Then we had to go to camp 1 and then base camp. And I remember Preetam was listening in on the comms, and he walked back up after we'd some like halfway between base camp and camp 1, and he brought me a Sprite. Holy shit, that tasted so good. It's like the best thing I ever had. I was like tearing up. I hugged him. I'm like, thank you, bro. Like, this is exactly what we needed. Yeah. But yeah, so I was the only one to summit that.
Wow.
And I came back and Nims was like, I didn't realize, I had no idea. I sat down with him and Nims was like, I'm pretty impressed. Like, I didn't think you were going to make that. I didn't think I was going to make it either. But I didn't want to give up, And so.
And what was it in those moments like where your body's telling you to give up, the conditions and the worst environment imaginable? I just was telling you on the way in that we lost this big section playoff game with my alma mater last night, and it's pretty disappointing. When you're you individually, you're inside your own, your weaknesses, right?
Yeah.
So when you're a part of a team, the internal weaknesses of a team, whether other people see it or not.
Yeah.
And when, you kind of hope that everybody doesn't see it.
Yeah.
That you can do enough to get through. And some of our weaknesses got exposed last night where, we were 21 and we were ranked the number 2 team in 4A this year by the end of the year. And we had lost about 4 games, but against other top 5 teams by a spread of 5 points. So not much. Anybody could have taken it, but we got pounded last night by Wayzata, which is a big rivalry. So it was disappointing. But what I could see is, and I wish we had more time for you to talk, and I can't wait to get this up so we can share it in the chat with my boys,
Yeah.
the high schoolers, but the
Yeah.
young ones too, as well as all the audience. But there's something about moments of adversity and controversy that some people can't deal with. They don't have good self-talk. They can't tap into that other reserve to go further. And I
Yeah.
noticed it for myself growing up. I used to be a kid that I had some struggles like you, but nothing to that extent. Didn't have any trouble with drugs, but I was just troubled kid. I had
Sure.
some troubles. Um, but I had a good self-talk.
Mm-hmm.
I talked to myself.
Mm-hmm.
And when things got bad, I was able to talk to myself. And as I became a better athlete, I was able to implement that. And like, if I set out to do 100 push-ups and I couldn't do it, there was something in me where it was like, even if I could only get to 75, it was like 76, 77,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
then it was 80 and then 100, you know what I mean? So I think a lot of people are missing that in their life in general, let
Yeah.
alone young athletes. But what is it for you? What was it for you in those moments?
And you bring up a really good topic, and that's it's why I'm doing this. And there's a lot more to the reason in the story of Everest too. But it's the same reason I got sober. I think. I mean, it just I never wanted to give up, right? And think about what that meant. If I woke up tomorrow and given up today, how I would feel about myself, right? Would I regret that moment? Would I say that's okay? Now, there's some circumstances where it's like, you know what? I'll finish that one some other time. Or maybe you're doing something for a long time and you're just like, I need just to switch.
Hmm.
I want to do something else now. That's perfectly fine too. But when you set out to do something, right, and you dedicate yourself, like giving up, as Nims would say, it's not in the blood. It's not in the blood for me, right? I am exceptionally competitive, but not just with other people, but with myself. And the whole reason for going on this trip was I wanted to know what I was made of, not just physically, but mentally, because this trip was far more of a mental challenge than anything else, and maybe even getting sober, right? At least in the moment, um, than anything else I've ever experienced. And I want to be able to put that into my repertoire of tools, right, and my resources where I can draw back on them and say, hey, you didn't give up in this moment. You didn't give up in that moment, right? And you build up enough of those experiences where then you say, yeah, I can get through this too. It's just a passing of time. Like there's just a little bit of discomfort that I have to feel.
Mm.
And so sometimes, I would meditate. I try to take myself out of the experience and just focus on the blessings that I had in my life, my family, my kids, why I was climbing, my grandfather, these kind of things, and just say, hey, like I said, it was just 10 more steps. I just kept telling myself, 10 more steps. That's all you got to do. And so I would break it down into things that I knew I could accomplish so that I could make the whole thing work.
Mm.
And so every 10 steps, I would just count those out all the way through 10. And I got to 10 and I said, cool, 10 more steps. And I'd start over again. And sure enough, I was standing on the summit of that mountain.
Damn.
And that's what I think a lot of people need to remember is that there's always going to be discomfort in the things that we want to accomplish because there's no growth if there isn't that discomfort, right? If everything was easy, we wouldn't be pushed to do something that is beyond what we feel right now is we're capable of, our capacity. And it allows us to then build a higher and higher benchmark, right? It's just like working out. It's just like school, right? I mean, there's grades in school for a reason. You go through the first grade, then you go through the second grade. It's not like you just start at 10th grade, right? And each of those is a foundational point where you can learn the next things that you need to do for the next grade. And it's the same thing with fitness, right? It's the same thing with building a business or mental health. There are steps and a foundation that you can take to get there. And it wasn't just that I had all of a sudden climbed a mountain. I'd been training for a long time, just physically, to be in the best shape that I could be in. And I adjusted some things to do this trip, one of which was wearing the mask continuously. It's restricting of the oxygen.
VO mask.
Yeah, and it helps with that kind of thing, your limbic response, right? Because everybody has this fight or flight experience. I mean, you're a fighter, you get it. I mean, you start getting punched in the head,
Oh,
it immediately triggers.
I'll tell you this, training when I first walked into the MMA gym, I didn't know what to expect. And I'm 28 years old, all right? I've lifelong of basketball, so I
Yeah.
understand being in a gym. I understand being in a competitive setting. But, you're in there and there's part of a sort of machismo and a humility that comes with the understanding. I had this, some guys don't, and they learn real quick that they're humbled by the situation.
Hmm.
But I understood, like, I'm in here with trained killers. These
Yeah.
people are highly, highly skilled, and I could get hurt. I
Yeah.
mean, if one of them wanted to, they could just hurt me.
Yeah.
And and I was blessed to be able to be with Greg Nelson, who's one of the most renowned mixed martial arts trainers in the world, and he's very good about keeping the gym in a real controlled environment for the most part.
Yeah.
And so I came up through it gradually and whatnot. But once I got to the point where I was ready to fight, I told Greg that I wanted, just go in the octagon. I skipped amateurs, which is just nuts. I mean, I should have took an amateur fight. But at the same time, I'm happy I didn't because I didn't care about the record,
Hmm.
right? Some guys go amateur because they're like, well, it doesn't really count on my
Yeah.
pro record and I want to get my feet wet. I'm 28. I don't need to get my feet wet, athletically. And so anyway, I got into my first when I got in the cage, I just remember the feeling of that morning and all the fighters telling me about it. And I'm like, nah, I'm gonna be good. I've been
Hmm.
under lights before. I've been in a, Yum Arena in Louisville with 16,000 fans and 14,000 of them are for Kentucky.
Yeah.
And it's just 2,000 of us Iowa State fans there,
Yeah.
right? I done seen some crazies. It's nothing like that. And when that octagon closes behind you, oh, there was moments where it was just like a blur.
Hmm.
It's just like a complete and utter blur. And you got to have that self-talk,
Yeah.
And I just told myself in that moment, like some of those moments, just keep fighting. Like I was down, guy took me down a couple of times in the
Hmm.
fight. That's why I lost the fight. I went the distance, was never knocked down, was never stunned or rocked or anything from strikes, but I got taken down too many times, which is typical
Yeah.
for
It
guys,
was a new fight
the
too.
wrestling, yeah,
Yeah.
it's typical. Now I'd be much better, but I remember being down and being so exhausted
Hmm.
because during camp I had starved myself because I wanted
Hmm.
to be thin. I wanted to be light and mobile. I
Hmm.
didn't even eat on the day of the fight. Nobody told me this ain't basketball. You need some fuel in the tank to
Yeah.
fight a fight. But I was down on the mat and got taken down. And I just remember this feeling of not barely being able to draw breath,
Yeah.
like being so tired, I could barely draw breath. But in my mind, I just told myself, get up.
Yeah.
And I was able to stand straight up. And Mike Chiesa, I don't know if you know that name, but Chiesa's the one who, when Conor McGregor threw the dolly at the bus,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
glass hit Chiesa in the face and it cut his eye a little
Hmm.
bit. But he was calling this fight for the LFA. And at the end of the fight, he was like, man, Royce showed a lot of good things, especially being able to get up as somebody who's never rolled before. And so,
Yeah.
it's just, and whoever watching, they just saw me stand up, but they don't know how physically tired I was mentally and what
Yeah.
I had to tell myself to stand up in those moments.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
No, I mean, it's a great story, and that's really about it. That's why I climb. That's why I'm trying to do what I'm doing with the Everest. So the whole purpose of this, when I did that first climb, getting back to my wife trying to tell me, hey, you should do something that's meaningful.
Mhm.
I wanted to make this climb impactful. I was turning 40, celebrating 20 years sober. All of these things were happening in my life, but I also wanted to start giving back for all the blessings that I had. So one of the things that we started to do is to raise money for the Minnesota Veterans Council, the MACV, down in St. Paul. And that's an organization that helps veterans that are going through PTSD, drug and alcohol addictions, all those kind of things, to help them find homes, help them find jobs, build resumes, job search. And so in this climb, we created, um, little GoFundMe and all that stuff. And we raised some money to then be able to buy them 4 different Mac computers for them to then put in their facility to create the resumes and all that. And that was a huge impact. And a lot of people seem to be very grateful, including the MACV, who then ended up asking us to help them with marketing and other things. And so I thought to myself, I'm like, all right, I'm going in the right direction. And it made me feel good about what I was doing. And I think the marketing and all the other things that I was doing was always kind of the next thing because I was pushed. It was like, oh, okay, law school because somebody else was going to law school. Oh, I got to, do this because I have a kid now or whatever it is. And I hadn't really spent a lot of time thinking about what filled my heart. Right. And everybody needs to make money. Everybody needs to pay their bills, pay for the kids, all that other stuff too. But in the end, it has to be fulfilling, right? You have to have passion behind it. And I knew that telling my story to other people, helping young kids as well, being of an age where I'm not too old to not relate to other people, but still young enough to like enjoy that experience with younger generations. And so I feel like, all right, now is the time. And when I say I'm a Doblin, most people don't know about that here, right? And I asked for sponsorships and funding and all that stuff, and I got no every time. They're like, no, we're not interested. Thank you so much. We wish you the best of luck. We're not interested. So I knew that I had to do something bigger to get more awareness. And I told my wife, I said, hey, if I'm successful at this, I'm going to want to go and do Everest. And she said, I know. And fortunately, she's been super supportive. She's like, I asked her to, and my oldest daughter, I said, if you don't want me to go, I won't. I know this is a dangerous trip. This is a dangerous trip. And they said, look, you're doing everything that you can intentionally, very thoughtfully to train. You've been doing it for a long time now. You're going with the best crew that's possible. They have the highest success rate. Like, we're confident that you're going to come home. You got more stuff to do in this world. I said, well, thank you. I appreciate that. And she's always been behind my back and supporting me. And so with this trip, like we're sharing, right? Everybody has an Everest story. It doesn't have to be the mountain itself, but everybody in their life has gone through something that they feel like it's just impossible to go through. And whether it's a higher power, a God, or the community, right? They're able to then accomplish those things. They're able to get through it. And it's probably all of the above. But we don't talk about it enough. We certainly don't talk about mental health enough. We don't talk about recovery and addiction enough. There's a stigma behind these things, right? But if you look at me today and how I am with my family, I go to church or whatever these things are, you would never know that I was homeless shooting up dope in my arms. Like, you would never know that. And that's a blessing, right? And I want to be able to have other people experience that blessing. And if I can give them some kind of support through the scholarships that we're raising through the nonprofit that we're putting together or that we put together and launched, and have other people feel inspired by this Everest trip, even if it's just one person, right? Then I have completed my goal. And I think that by doing something that seems utterly impossible and coming back down and sharing the story with people, that it will hopefully inspire them to be like, I've been telling myself in my head, someday I'm going to do this, but today's going to be the day. Just like when I saw Nims and his team in 14 Peaks do it, I said, today's going to be the day. And that's what people need. They need to have that inner voice. And oftentimes it's really just another person kind of pushing them in the right direction. And then eventually they build up their own confidence where they can say, yeah, I'm worthy enough to do this. I'm strong enough to do this, both mentally and physically. And I have the community and support around me to make this work. And it could be a career change. It could be, a job or state change. It could be having kids of their own. It could be getting back into somebody's life, that they didn't have the relationship with, whatever it might be. It might be going back to school, anything, right? But we need more love and support in this world. Every day we watch the news and it's hard, man.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's sad,
no
right?
doubt.
And growing up in my life, with my father's experiences, with my grandfather's experiences, it wasn't all peaches and cream. It was tough stuff. And not that we don't need that to experience and become things, but I also feel like the reason that I'm able to do this is because somebody loved on me. Somebody gave me enough support. Somebody believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. And I want to do that for other people. I want to believe in other people so that eventually they feel like, yeah, I got this. So,
Amen, brother.
yeah.
Ryan, it's been a blast, man.
Dude,
It's such a pleasure to meet you, man. And we
Yeah.
definitely give us the website though before you go. I know you guys
Yeah.
got the website.
Yeah.
Give me the website.
So it's the Ryan Rivard, TheRyanRivard.com. And on that website, we have tons of information, again, about my backstory, about the pillars of the nonprofit that we set up where we're raising money, because we're not just doing this for mental health and youth recovery, but we're also doing this for DEI initiatives, the diversity, inclusion, and equality programs and those kind of things, and for underserved communities to be able to have access and resources for mental health. There's a link for donations if people want involved in that manner. Again, those donations will be through a 501c or C3 nonprofit, and people will be able to then take tax contributions and donations through that. But if there are organizations or corporations that want to get involved from a corporate level, we're also putting together marketing packages, promotions, patches on the gear, hats, flags on the summit of Everest, all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of opportunities for people to get involved. And again, you can do it anonymously. You don't have to say your name, or you can donate on behalf of somebody as well if you want to set a tribute for somebody. So, yeah.
Great, man. We got to have you back on. You definitely got to. We got to talk more mountain climbing next time. But I think this is as powerful as it gets. And I know you talked about church and God, and I want to be able to touch on that next time as
Yeah.
well, if we get a chance. And certainly when you do accomplish this great feat of climbing Mount Everest, to have you back in
Yeah.
and tell us a bit about it, since you live here in Minnesota, so
Absolutely.
you're right around the way. That would be great. We appreciate you being here, brother. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
We'll schedule another time to do a more mountain climbing episode. But we wish you luck on your trip, on your adventure with Mount Everest. And we thank you for being here today.
Thank you, man.
Yeah,
I
man.
really appreciate it. This was great.
Yeah, that's it for us, everybody. Please call me crazy. Another great family and friends episode. Tune in tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern, on Real America's Voice for the Royce White Show. Thank you for your viewership and listenership today and in the future. The fight continues, and as always, Godspeed.